What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Throw Show. We're going to cover a couple big throws, and then we're going to go deep into the Paralympic controversy around Neeraj Zulkefy from Malaysia, and then we're going to cover some huge coaching moves in the world of throwing at the NCAA collegiate level. So, Trevor, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
What are you focusing on right now with your athletes as you're in the fall? And a lot of these high school throwers are, some of them might be in season for other sports, and some of them, are just training right now. What are you doing?
A bunch of the high school guys are playing football right now. I think the goal with them is just to get any throwing they get in during the football season is a plus. They don't have to be going, all out in training. Their focus is football right now, and that's great. But, if they can throw once or twice a week, just get out there, at the school or wherever and take a couple throws, that's going to help carry over their summer training to, when they start up again in November, December.
Right.
And just, kind of minimize those losses through the season. For everyone else, it's basically just like, honestly, this time of year, I think is like doing more long-term technical changes, stuff that we saw was wrong during the season, but, we didn't want to get right into and dive into because it might have affected some of their throws for competition. And that's what we focus on technically, but then strength-wise is just getting as big as possible, strong as possible, and, really trying to build a solid base, before we get into the season in the winter.
What position would Daniel Stahl play if he was a football player?
Kicker.
But he's flat-footed.
That's true. I don't know. He could. That'd be interesting.
I would say D tackle or guard because he moves so well, and that takes us right into him throwing 69-31. And one thing I wanted to bring up is, I brought this up outside today actually at throwing. The 100-meter women, especially I've been following the Swiss girls, Cam Bungie, and then the Jamaicans. They're still competing at this super high level in the 100 meters. Fraser Price is running like 10.7 every week, and it's like, how are they doing that? And then you see Stahl throw 69-31, September 3rd or whatever the date was, mm-hmm. And it's like, to be able to put out this style of throw, and actually, other than his reverse seems a little odd, but like his actual movement in this throw, I really, really liked. And it's just like one of those things where it's phenomenal that these guys are able to hold this form this late in the season. Mm-hmm. I was actually talking to Rudy Winkler about this today, because before he left for Tokyo, he's like, dude, I was throwing 79 every throw, 79, 79, 79. And then as soon as he got back from Tokyo, he's like, I was throwing 75, 74, 75, 74. And he just threw like 75 or 76, I think, in Poland. He's like, dude, it's just hard. You just get so worn out. Mm-hmm. But the best of the best don't. And I don't. Yeah. What is it? What do you think that is? Or do you think it's just thousands and thousands of reps?
I think that's basically what it is. And like, you don't see a whole lot of young throwers doing that, mm-hmm. stuff like this. And I think that it comes into just, becoming, the movement is just second nature to you. It's not like working on, new things every day. It's not doing different stuff all the time. It's just the same. It's not only throwing, consistently for years and years and years, but it's throwing the same way and with the same, focus, I think, for long periods of time that builds that consistency. Yeah. What would you say?
I think that's part of it. I also think, too, with Stahl, it is easier with him with travel. The Europeans have a little bit easier travel schedule than anybody in the Western Hemisphere. I also think with him, the spotlight has a big, this meet looks a little bit smaller, but everybody's sort of on top of you. It looks like it's a pretty entertaining style meet where there's a lot more energy right on the circle, so it could be a little bit easier to get up for it. Mm-hmm. And I have seen some of his lifting videos recently where he has been like pushing it a little bit more. And I think, obviously too, I think a lot of these guys are going to look at it like, all right, if I can compete till middle of September, I think next week's the Diamond League final. If I can compete till middle of September, I'm going to give myself 4 to 5 weeks off afterwards. So I think they also see, I think it's like approaching it with that true business mentality where this is their livelihood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a lot, it's like my strength coach used to say this growing up in high school. He would always say, nobody's giving the garbage man a day off from work. He's got to do physical labor every single day, and he just adapts to it over and over and over again. And, and it might be like, this is the way these guys are wired because it is their means of making money.
Yeah, I also think I also think we look at it through a different lens because of how our high school and NCAA seasons are set up.
Yeah.
And that our primary season is during the spring. When we get to the end of the summer and the fall, it's like, how are these guys still doing it? But, Stahl wasn't competing in the spring like a lot of, U.S. throwers. Maybe he did a couple meets, I don't know. But I don't think he really started competing hard until, honestly, I think the Olympics was one of his first
I would say
handful
June,
meets of the year. So I feel like now it's just like, he prepared for this. He's preparing that the summer months are, is when I'm competing, when I'm going to be in top shape.
All right, so who are you going into next? Oh, Neeraj Chopra, the Javelin Olympic champ.
Yeah, so this is a video he posted himself.
I think what's interesting with this throw is that I don't think anybody saw him winning. If we could go back and look at the odds, but I'm sure they were absurdly challenging for him to come out on top of winning. Mm-hmm. I think everybody had Vetter winning at that point. And for him to do this, he has competed really well on the international stage. He seems to be a gamer. I think what's crazy is something like this could completely. It's like when. Oh my gosh, why can't I think about his name from Trinidad? Walcott, when he won in 12 and then medaled again in 16. It's like, dude, those are moments that can completely change the trajectory of your life. It's like the Filipino woman who won the 55K clean or weightlifting gold medal. She was given 2 mansions that she doesn't have to pay taxes on or pay for the rest of her life. And it's like, this stuff can completely change someone's life from specific countries. It's a little bit different, but I think just winning a gold medal in general at the Olympics is changing your life no matter what.
Yeah, I also think this is just a really cool moment for India as a throwing country as well. Yep. And I think that we're going to start to see India start to rise more in the throws. I mean, like you see, I think it was Kamalpreet in discus.
Yeah.
The woman who placed, I think she was like 5th or 6th. And
I got to see her train for like 3 days in a row.
Really? Yeah. And I don't know. I just think we're going to be seeing more Indians place high at world championship level meets in the future.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so heading into Krauser. So this throw from Krauser got a whole bunch of love. And I even brought this throw up to you in the office here. Mm-hmm. I was like, hey, what do you see out of this? Because Taman and I had discussed it. You and I then ended up discussing it. And it was interesting because I don't even know what he ended up throwing here. But one thing, I liked the rhythm to it. The rhythm seemed nice. But there was like there was a little bit more of a hop off of his left. So that I feel like he got caught up a little bit at the front. But the actual rhythm of the throw seemed really, really sweet. So it's like, right. What would you see here from a technical perspective that maybe you like and maybe that you don't like?
Yeah, I agree. I think he is a little bit more hop through the middle of the circle, which I think gets his right just a little longer across. But I think what he does really well in this throw, I think he catches the shot back really deep. And it almost seems like more of a rotational finish than maybe he typically does, maybe partially because of that. Mm-hmm. If you land with the shot a little bit more open and it just kind of comes a little bit straight through, then, if you're catching it back more, you have to rotate out of that to get into the finish and to not finish down the right sector line, which he finishes pretty much straight down the middle. So, those are my thoughts. What do you think?
I mean, I also said this to Taman, that my critique was he might be a little jumpy off his left, like very, very more so than he normally is. But at the same time, if one of my throwers moved like this, I'd be ecstatic. I think you're right, though. I think he does catch that deep, and he works it really well at the front. I think it's just interesting to see some small technical changes, especially the greatest shot putter of all time.
I also think, we've seen so many of Krauser's throws, and to see something a little different is abnormal, I think, and it makes you wonder, is it intentional? Is it not intentional? Is it the
chocolate? He even says here,
is it the chocolate? It very well may be.
If you had to choose between chocolate or ice cream for the rest of your life, you could...
Ice cream.
Okay, so here's Joshua Tunde, who almost made the U.S. Olympic team, and I believe he's been a little bit fatigued. He's had a couple throws like 2070. Not that those are bad throws, but not near his PR, right? Excuse me. But what he ends up doing is goes over to I don't even know where this was. Yeah, I have no idea. Is it in Italy? It might be in Italy, and just cranks a 22-meter bomb. And I think, I talked with Mike Sargent, his coach in college, and that's a great reaction from him. Yeah. And one of the things what else is cool here is that Josh never shows. I feel like he rarely ever shows emotion. So I think that's really, really freaking cool. But it's one of the things that Sargent said during the trials was, when we were down there, was that he felt like Josh could go 22, at any moment. But it's a tough meet, and it's a tough throw to throw 22 meters. So for him to join that club, I think it's awesome. I think it's fantastic, and he's just putting himself right back in that mix of those top 5 guys now, really, where it's Otterdahl, Darrell, Josh, and then Joe and Krauser now. Now we've got 5 guys that are 100% can be bombing.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, who's gonna come into the mix? I think Liskowitz got 6th. He's another guy that could go 21.50 to 22 next year. Mm-hmm. I don't really remember the rest of the places. I know, it's crazy how many of these guys might be over 21 mid by this time next year. So Congrats to him on this huge throw. And it's, I've always liked his movement out of the back. I think, all right, so going from Tunde, that 22-meter bomb, now we're going to go right into a throwback of Kovacs and Tom Walsh from, I think this was, they said, 7 years or 9 years ago?
Wait, so how old does that put these?
So that would be,
I think
they're 32, I think. So that would be 23. They look like they're 12.
They look younger than 23.
So by this point, I wonder what their PRs were. And I still think that's Justin.
I don't know.
I think that might be Justin.
I mean, he kind of looks like, I don't know.
But so they'd be 23, and by this time Joe had thrown 21 low. I don't know, Walsh. Walsh probably 21 low, and now they're both 22.91, 22.90 is their PR, and probably 50 pounds heavier.
I think the beards
too.
make a big difference too.
But look at their shoulders.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Their shoulders are just
probably
massive.
At least have an extra 100 pounds on them. Maybe not 100. Pure muscle.
So I think it's an interesting thing, because I was actually talking to one of our guys that we train online today, this morning on Instagram, and he was just commenting about when are we going to back off of some of the hypertrophy work, and I was sort of like,
does it look like Tom and Joe
ever backed off
the hypertrophy work?
But it was also like, dude, you're you can't even bench 100 kilos for like 10 reps yet. Like, we're not backing off till you can hit that. And I think that that's one thing, you know, Joe's hit 600 plus for multiple reps at 100 pounds possibly. And then Tom has done just absurd weights where you can even go back 3 or 4 years in some of his deadlift work, and some of his speed work's just phenomenal. So it's like, I think it just shows that transformation of, and you can see it in Krauser too, from when he was in college till now, where it's like, dude, you've got to be really, really strong to throw 23 meters.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. It's like, dude, you want to drop bombs and stay healthy? You've got to do that. I think the thing is, you can back off of some heavy lifting, but you might not be as healthy long term because you don't have that ability to handle the speed and that deceleration. Mm-hmm. That's a great, and even Robert Harding commenting on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that takes us into the F20 Paralympic controversy. So we brought this up a little bit in the beginning. So Ziad Zulkefy here, who's got great glide technique from Malaysia, was competing under protest, and so he is the defending Paralympic champ. He won in 2016. Wait, so did he throw? See, I think that it might have even said 18 meters there. I could be wrong. Let's see.
I think it was like 16 plus, because
Okay.
you see the 17-meter line.
I thought they had one out there that was, hang on. Anyway.
Oh, the winner, are you saying?
No, when they have, I thought they popped up like his series. Anyway.
Oh, that could be.
One of the interesting things here that happens is that they ended up.
Yeah, 1794.
Yeah, sorry.
You're right.
He goes 1794. What's that, like 58.9, something along those lines, just shy of 59 feet. And he's throwing under protest. I think there was one or two other athletes that was also throwing under protest, mainly because they claim that they were late to the call room. And so when you are at the Olympics, they call you, and you get 2 calls to get to the call room. Call room is right outside the stadium, and then from there you put in this like holding room, and then they walk you into the stadium. And when you're in that holding room, I think athletes have like another 5 minutes to get there. But the whole time they're calling you. If you're not checked in, they will call you multiple times to get to the call room before you actually don't make the time. And everybody knows the time you get called. Everybody knows the second call time, and then like if you're not there at that other time, you're done. You don't get to compete. So,
and they know that.
Everybody knows that ahead of time. Yeah, that's very, very clear. I think one of the things that I've read from Zulkefy here is his argument was that they didn't understand the language, so there was a language barrier, and they weren't positive about the time to get there. And I think that even mentions that in the NPR article where they go over that. Now, another issue I sort of have is I don't know if I buy it because I know that they're announcing in English. I also know in Malaysia they speak English. Not everybody speaks English, but it's like a vast majority of the population speaks English. So the team should be well prepared for this. Mm-hmm. And he's also an Olympic champ from 2016. So I sort of think it's literally could be an administrative coaching error. I think Zulkefy came out and sort of owned it, that he let down the Malaysian population and the Malaysian fans. But I think it's just one of those things where it's like, as a coach, you have to be prepared in every way, shape, and form for what you need to do and plan ahead for the worst case scenario. Because there was an Olympic sprinter from the U.S. who had to get like a taxi to make sure that they got to the stadium on time because they missed the bus. Mm-hmm. So the bus schedule is laid out. Everything, the call room is laid out. And when you're on the warm-up track, they're calling you over and over and over again to get there.
Yeah.
So it sort of stinks, but it's also like, dude, they set it up pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have all the details, but I would err on the administrative side that it's an error more so with his coaching staff probably.
Yeah, I feel like that's always an unfortunate way to go out on like technicalities like that. Like we saw, and even with CC, like it's the same, not the same but similar sort of thing where there's a breakthrough at some point on an administrative error, and it affects someone's ability to really see through their dreams. So
absolutely. And I think before we get into a lot of the coaching changes, David Blair finished just off the medal stand, the U.S. I think he's at 44. Jeremy Campbell ended up winning that Olympic gold medal, so Blair was just off the medal stand. Josh Shinamo got the bronze medal in his section, and I always feel bad for him because his main competition, that dude from Canada, is like 7'1".
That's good.
He's like, I look like a child standing next to him on the podium. So the para games ended up being really successful with a lot of good results, and even those guys competing in some really poor conditions. A lot of the days it was raining over there. But it's just interesting. Jeremy Campbell's another great discus thrower who I think a lot of people could watch and see. He's done damage. I think he's a world champion already. And just learn from these guys, learn from these athletes as even from their technique. Like we have had podcasts with Aled Davies. He also ended up defending his Olympic title. Or I think I don't know if he won in 16, but he brought home the gold, and he's another great competitor. And it was an absolute torrential downpour when he was competing. So, Trevor, you were an NCAA Division I collegiate throws coach.
That's right.
What is attractive behind being a D1 throws coach? What's cool about it?
I mean, you get nice facilities, you get money, you get a budget to work with.
Okay.
You have scholarships to give out.
How big was your budget?
Really is whatever. The budget was on the track team, so is up to for us at least, it was up to the discretion of the head coach, where funds were, put. But
and is this regarding equipment, or is this regarding actual funding for scholarships? Okay.
Well, both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
So yeah, then that's just it's different everywhere you go. Sometimes coaches portion out. Okay, the throws get this amount of scholarships to hand out, distance this amount. But for us, it was all kind of case-to-case basis. But I think it's nice to be able to provide for the athletes just from shoes and equipment, and I never got caught up with oh man, I wish we had these weighted implements and we couldn't get them, or we got shoes, lifting shoes, throwing shoes, all that. And so I think just the ability to do that, where I know I've coached at D2 schools and D3 schools, and you can't do that. There's just not the funds there for that. But
what's the downside behind it?
The downside, I think that there's more travel involved. You have to travel more, which I liked. I think a lot of people enjoy who get into that type of job. But if you're more of a like to stay in one place and just kind of have more of a consistent routine, that's definitely different. Not going to be the best there, but honestly, overall, I had a blast when I was coaching. I thought it was a lot of fun, and just great to have a group of committed athletes that you could just really focus on and just take to to develop to the next level.
So what do you think would be playing devil's advocate here, because we're going to go into a lot of coaching changes that we're going to discuss. What do you think is the overarching motivation for a lot of coaches that might move or have moved?
I would say location and money would probably be the biggest things. I stopped coaching because of location.
Yeah.
That's why I moved back home. And also, pretty good opportunity here. But But the location was pivotal in why I, stopped coaching. And, I know in a lot of situations too, even at a mid-major D1 level, you're not going to be making a whole lot of money. And I think if you have the opportunity to move up just from a financial standpoint to support your family, you can't support a family on what most, even mid-major Division I coaches would make. Like you need a supplemental income.
How about
most likely?
What about relationship with your boss?
That's a good one too. I'd say, or coworkers, other coaches.
You would never leave your current job though because of your boss.
Oh no, of course not. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, and I wouldn't blame someone for that. I mean, you have to, if you don't have a healthy work environment, like that's not a good life,
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think those are good three different things.
So why don't we go into, let's try and get the rundown here. So we got Ashley Kovacs, who I think, based off the track record, what she did at Ohio State, what she's done at Western Kentucky, what she's done with Joe, coaching Joe Kovacs, arguably one of the best in the world, left Ohio State to go coach and be the associate head coach at Vanderbilt. And one of the quotes she has here is, Vanderbilt's track and field is a sleeping giant, and she looks forward to fulfilling her role in the awakening of the program. And I think that, associate head coach, probably a pay raise. It's in the SEC, so there might be a little bit better, also more funding, possibly. Associate head coach might have a little bit more power there. Leaving the Big Ten, location might not be as ideal to where she was, but also Nashville is a cool town. It's a really hipster town. So I think it's an interesting move, and what I wanted to do was sort of go through them all and then talk about what surprises you the most.
Okay.
So I'm putting pressure on
you.
You. So we got Ashley Kovacs, who left Ohio State. Let's go into Eric Worski, who was at Iowa. He was at Cal State Northridge prior to this. Did a really, really good job just dominating at Iowa. Lots of really top-level talent. Loggy came out of there. She tore it up, absolutely killed it in the NCAA and at World Championships even in 2019, made the final. So he was at Iowa for about 4 or 5 seasons, got the job at Florida. So that's, I would say, moving from Iowa to Florida would be a rise in his, he's at one Power 5 to another Power 5, but he's in the SEC, he's in the South, he's at Florida where it's known, like they're pretty well known for their track. I think Steve Lemke was there, I think was his name, and he has retired, I believe. So he's got big shoes to fill. They've had really good throwers in the past, and so now he's down there, and that, I think, is a pretty big move as well with Worski. And Worski's a good up-and-comer guy, and actually, ironically, was also one of Joe's training partners at the OTC. So he's got some pretty good background. And that brings us to Greg Watson, who has left. He was at LSU. He had been at Kansas State University for a while. He had been a couple different places, and then left and went to from K-State to LSU, and then was at LSU, I think, for about 4 or 5 years, and now has come back to K-State. And I think he might even be in another situation as an associate head coach, while taking, going back and being the throws coach. So the coach that was at K-State, Nathan Ott, has left K-State and gone to Grand Canyon. Along Brooke Anderson has left and gone with him there. So that's interesting, sort of dynamics where Watson left and then comes back. And we also need to add in Ryan Hirschberger, who
That's right. Yeah.
was at UNC Charlotte and left UNC Charlotte to head to the United States Military Academy, a.k.a. West Point, where Luke Noonan is training, trying to get his bench up. So a little bit of like a mid-level movement there, I would say. And Angelo, who was at West Point, has left and moved to Duke. I think it's at Duke. I think he's at Duke. I'm not positive. I'm trying to keep all this straight. And then who's the next one here? So then we're going to move into, Ray Robinson.
Wait. We should do, because this ties into LSU.
Okay, so tying into the LSU situation is Greg leaves LSU. Greg Watson leaves LSU, goes back to K-State. And in so doing, I think associate head coach or assistant head coach, I don't know what you would want to call it, Jerry Clayton, who was at Michigan, leaves Michigan and becomes just the throws coach at LSU, not the associate head coach or anything. So that could be an instance where we're talking about possibly, I would say, a boss situation maybe, maybe not happy with administration. Jerry, he coached Sandra Perkovich for a time back in the early 2000s. He was at Auburn, sort of like a very well-known, historically successful collegiate coach, developed Andrew Liskowitz, just tons and tons of really, really high-end throwers. So he's now down at LSU. So there's currently a void at Michigan. I don't know if they've hired the coach at Purdue. I don't know if Ohio State has hired a coach. So there's a couple.
Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan.
Yep, all had openings. And in the meantime, Iowa, who also had an opening in the Big Ten, I believe might have the best hiring of all right now as far as sort of like talent, an up-and-coming coaching talent in Ray Robinson. So we've got Ray Robinson, who I in the past have said I think he's one of the best in the NCAA, a top 5 guy in the NCAA when he was at Tiffin. So he had multiple guys throw high, deep 19 meters. He coached Coy Blair, just like every school record you could ever imagine at Tiffin. I don't know how many dozens of All-Americans, and he's had multiple guys that could hang with Power 5 guys at the D2 level. So he's left Tiffin, and he's taken the job at Iowa. John Yeoman, who threw at Penn State, has left Robert Morris to go to Tiffin.
Right.
So I think, I know I'm missing a couple, but I think
Sinclair and Nebraska.
And then and so Scott Kapos has left Nebraska. Justin St. Clair, who I believe is probably the best in the NCAA currently, took the job at Nebraska, and we should have like a ranking board of coaches. And
you could just lay all this out. It'd make way more sense.
And Jeff Flombaum, who was at Penn prior and Lehigh, is now at North Dakota State.
Really?
Yeah, so there's just this
I didn't know that.
crazy workaround.
And it's interesting too, as one position becomes vacant, and then it has to be filled, which creates another vacancy, which has to be filled, which creates another vacancy, and it just keeps stringing out. Kind of now we're getting into the year, the start of the year, and it's just interesting how it just keeps one change can make just make like a domino effect of other changes.
Absolutely. And I think what's crazy is that you see someone actually who we mentioned earlier, Mike Sargent, who coached Josh Awatunde. He's been at South Carolina for multiple decades. We missed one. John Frazier has left UCLA to be the head coach at Texas State.
That's right.
So Frazier is out at UCLA, and I don't know who they hired.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy. Partially, I think it's...
So UCLA, Ohio State, Michigan, Purdue, 4 huge throw schools.
Yeah.
Are all
without
vacant,
coaches.
as far as we know.
Yeah. And what I think Purdue hired somebody, but I don't know who they hired. I didn't check. I think what's crazy with Frazier, and John Frazier, if you're watching this, thanks for sending those COVID pills. I appreciate it. I had a long talk with him about these pills he was taking at the trials. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't say that. But with Coach Frazier leaving, I always thought it's got to be hard to live in L.A. as a throws coach because he's probably making good money, but to live in L.A. has got to be brutal. So he moves to be the head coach at Texas State, which I think is very, very interesting, and he could do really well. It's a consistently pretty solid school as far as athletics is concerned with track and field. they have a pretty good history there, and I think the high jump Olympic champ in '96 went there. So anyway, there's just so much movement. Ray going to Iowa, it's interesting too, because then you start to see Frazier's got a family, Ray's got a family, and there are different points in their life, where he's got younger kids here. So it's like, then you start to think about the personal stuff going into it, and it's just, how do you handle that I would ask you, how do you handle that as an athlete, one, not knowing if you're going to have, some of these guys might have 2, 3, 4 coaches in their career.
Right.
But then 2, how do you handle that as a coach? Like, at what point do you say, you know what, I want to stay here indefinitely? Or 2, I don't like my boss, I don't like my head coach, I don't like the athletic director, I'm not getting the funding. So I guess I don't even know where to start, because I look at it from our perspective, where we're sort of in this private sector. And I'll be honest, I've been waiting for Ryan Whiting. I've been interested to see if he'll get into the collegiate ranks or not. And now I don't know if he will. I think he might also be looking at this maybe the same way I do, where I almost have a jealousy of these guys, but then at the same time I see all this working, like all the
instability.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe I shouldn't be jealous. Maybe it's just like grass is always greener, where I see their facilities. I'm like, maybe I don't need those facilities. Maybe it is just the stability is more important. I've got a family here, all those things. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think on one hand, it's, coaching in the NCAA, really any sport, you're traveling all the time. I think just how it's set up lends itself to being, you can't be very tied down and be an NCAA, especially a Division I coach in any sport. You have to be able to, be flexible, be, on the move, and just, you have to travel a lot. And I think that just that fact makes it more likely for people to, just uproot and move somewhere else. Just because they're already used to traveling a lot. They're used to being, and just having busy schedules and, busy weekends. So I'd say that from the coaches' end, I think that's one thing that maybe plays into, why coaches move around. And also I think it's just even if there's people out there wanting to be a throws coach, it's something you need to go in expecting.
Yeah.
That it isn't just the type of job where you can just, lay down somewhere and just, have a normal, 9 to 5 and just kind of coast. It's something you're going to be traveling, you're going to be, working odd hours and just doing a lot of different things, especially on your own initiative all the time. And, it's not a simple job.
Yeah.
But I think from the athlete's end, I think, it's something that's unfortunate, but it is reality. And I think that, the coaching changes in 4 or 5 year period, while you're at a school. And I think it's something that everyone has to be ready for.
Yeah.
If you're going somewhere, no matter what the coach says, they're gonna, die at this school, whatever, you need to be ready and be willing to at least, be ready to see your options if, when the coach uproots and leaves.
It goes elsewhere, yeah.
And I think, you have to be ready for that. You have to be either really confident and just comfortable in the school you're at and just, whether it's making friends or, just the major you're in or just, the area that you're in and be, confident there, or you have to be willing to possibly transfer if you believe your career is that tightly bound to the coach that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's accurate. For me personally, I had 3 college coaches, and that was in 2002 to 7, right? So I had a coach that recruited me and coached me for about a week and then left at Penn State. Then I had a coach for 4 years, and then I had my 5th year coach. And I think what you just said is that you've just got to be like, as an athlete, able to go with the flow, and that's when you can make and realize like those systems might change, and recognize that what you said is key. Coaches might say, I'm gonna be here long term, no matter what, and literally leave the next day because their best interest is themselves and their family, and that's okay. They have to be. They should be selfish. You know, if they've got a wife, kids, and a family, or a husband and kids, like they should be selfish. It's not. You're not their priority. Their family's their priority, and you're their second priority. So I think that, or third. You know, I think it's like just being ready for it and recognizing that a lot can happen, a lot can change.
And I think that's where that's where the best athletes come from. Like you're not going to be the best athlete if you are absolutely dependent on someone else. You have to be able to have independence. And I actually think I'm going to put a plug for D3 athletes out there because I think D3 athletes, that's their whole career.
Yeah, every year they have a new coach almost.
A new coach, no facilities, no anything.
No gear.
But it's just at this level, it's like you have the best, and then it's like when it's taken away, you know, what's left?
Right.
You know, and I think that's where you need to be, you know, just fully functional and by yourself, and you know, and be able to be adaptable to different circumstances to be able, you know, to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's huge. So, my throat. I want everybody to comment down below on who you guys think was the most surprising move or who made out in this situation. I think Vanderbilt made out. I think Iowa made out big time. I think Florida got a great replacement with Worski signing down there. The situation with K-State and with Watson, I think turned out probably better the way he wanted for, you know, maybe his family. I guess that's probably why he moved back there. He's going to go back there and, you know, be super successful. Jerry Clayton goes back to the SEC, so he had been at Auburn earlier in his career. So it's just sort of the intertwining spool of everything that's going into this, and then you see someone like Hirschberger even potentially making maybe a little bit step forward in his career. How long is he going to be at West Point? It's interesting. So comment down below with who you guys think had the craziest move and what's going to pay off the most for that school. Until next time, guys, peace.